The Egyptian president and his Algerian counterparts stressed the necessity of a ceasefire in Gaza and Lebanon. Israeli warplanes launched a raid on Bafia and Qiyam in Lebanon with 2 missiles. And an Israeli airstrike on northern Gaza kills 40 Palestinians and injures 80. It's 8 p.m. Cairo local time, and you are now watching Q News. We begin today's bulletin with the latest on escalating regional tensions.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Egyptian President Abdel Fattah El-Sisi emphasized a strong consensus with Algeria on the importance of restoring stability in the region, free from foreign interference in domestic affairs. He also stressed the urgent need for a ceasefire in Gaza and Lebanon. In a joint press conference with Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune, President Abdel Fattah El-Sisi highlighted the Arab consensus on the importance of halting hostilities in Gaza, allowing for the delivery of aid and releasing Palestinian hostages and prisoners. He reiterated Egypt's efforts to launch an initiative aimed at advancing the situation and achieving a 2-day ceasefire in Gaza. Sirens and explosions have been heard near the eastern part of Israel's border with Lebanon overnight. Several small projectiles fired from Lebanon were seen over the Lebanese-Israeli border. From their side, Hezbollah stated that they launched an air attack with drones on the Yudifat Military Industries Company located southeast of Accra. Explosions have been heard and smoke has been seen over Beirut as Israel continues its operations against Hezbollah. Local media reported heavy airstrikes launched last night by the Israeli occupation forces across various regions, including Al-Jamous Sphere and Haret Haik in the Dahiyya district of the Lebanese capital. The strikes resulted in the widespread destruction of buildings, infrastructure, and facilities. 6 civilians have been killed in Lebanon as a result of 3 Israeli airstrikes targeting several areas in Marja'iyun in southern Lebanon. The national news agency also confirmed that an Israeli airstrike targeted the town of Al-Burj al-Shamali near Tyre, resulting in the deaths of 2 individuals and injuries of another. Israeli warplanes have launched a raid on Bafia and struck Qiyam with 2 missiles, one near a prison and the other targeting the Jalahia area. Israeli warplanes also raided the Matraba crossing at the northern border with Syria, killing 2 Syrian soldiers and wounding 5 others. The Lebanese people continue to flee through the border to Syria amid ongoing hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah. People were seen carrying their belongings and walking to Syria at Al-Masna border, which separates the 2 countries. 3 people were killed in an Israeli airstrike on a house in the town of Zawtar al-Sharqiyya in the Nabatiya district of Lebanon. Israel carried out an airstrike on the town of Deir Ammar, accompanied by heavy artillery shelling of the villages in the western sector, including Zibqin, Yatta, Tyre, Harfa, and Al-Jabin and Yarun. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has stated that Iran is no longer able to use Hamas in the Gaza Strip or Hezbollah in Lebanon against Israel. Gallant added that Hamas is no longer capable of carrying out any military operations in Gaza. He also mentioned that the senior leaders of Hezbollah and most of its missile capabilities have been completely eliminated. The Lebanese authorities have announced that the death toll from Israeli attacks on Lebanon has climbed to over 2,600, with over 12,300 wounded since October 8th of last year. This came after the Ministry of Public Health announced that Israel launched an airstrike on a health center in Lebanon's southern town of Bazouriya, killing 1 nurse and injuring 5 others. That brings the total number of losses in Lebanon's health and emergency sectors to 164 deaths and more than 270 injuries. Tensions are soaring as Israeli airstrikes devastate Gaza and Lebanon, sparking casualties, destruction, and regional instability.
Tensions across the Middle East are escalating as Israeli aggression intensifies in Gaza and Lebanon, leading to rising casualties, widespread destruction, and growing regional instability. Palestinian news outlets, citing medical sources, reported that an Israeli airstrike on a residential block in Beit Lahia, northern Gaza, killed 40 Palestinians, including women and children. The attack also injured 80 others, further straining the already overwhelmed healthcare system. Since the start of Israeli siege on northern Gaza, the civilian death toll has risen to approximately 1,000, with medical services now non-operational. In a separate incident, 2 Palestinians were killed when Israeli drones struck near Al-Fakhura school in northern Gaza City, while helicopters fired rounds at southern parts of the city. Meanwhile, tensions spread to Lebanon, where Israel intercepted 2 drones launched from Lebanese territory toward Nahariya. Israeli media reported sirens sounding in the city as the drones were intercepted over open areas. In response, Israel conducted airstrikes targeting southern Beirut suburbs, including Hadath, Burj al-Barajna, and Harat Hareik. Lebanese media further reported that 6 people were killed in an Israeli strike on the town of Judaidah in Marjiyun in southern Lebanon. Amid these escalating hostilities, diplomatic efforts and humanitarian aid remain critical in seeking de-escalation. The international community continues to push for an end to the violence, hoping for a path toward lasting peace and stability in the region.
And for more analysis, we now move to Salma in our newsroom. To you, Salma.
Thank you, Hala. And for further analysis on the situation in Lebanon, we are joined from Beirut by the political writer Suruj Apikyan. Mr. Suruj, thank you for joining us on Qnews. First off, in light of the expansive military actions between the 2 sides, is it possible to halt the ongoing escalation between Israel and Hezbollah?
Welcome. The escalation took very violent forms last night in Beirut. And as you mentioned in your bulletin, it was a very difficult night. Yes, there is another course of events regarding the escalation between the resistance and Hezbollah and Iran behind them. They started to take another form, which is missiles, focusing on missiles and drones more than the confrontation on the ground. From Lebanon, there is no attack against Israel through the fighters, but there are missiles that hit Israel in the depth. This is a new development in the recent days. So we are facing a new phase of this war. So I can definitely say that stopping the war at this point is not something that can happen.
So regarding the U.S. call for a 21-day ceasefire, is this still on the table? And will the Biden administration succeed in achieving a ceasefire in Lebanon before the presidential elections?
Perhaps they may succeed in achieving a ceasefire for humanitarian reasons, but halting the war is a different story. What I mean is halting the war. If Biden's administration could convince the Israeli side, because there are humanitarian cases in both Gaza and Lebanon, all of these things have to go in line with the Israeli interest, meaning that a ceasefire for certain days or for a number of weeks, the Israelis will think if this would harm them or not, or this would give a time scope for Hezbollah to take a breath and conduct other operations or to pose in strategic military sites. So it's related to the actions on the ground. Based on this, the Israeli response will come accordingly. Yes, Lebanon needs to breathe a little because the humanitarian situation in Lebanon is unbearable. So we hope this would happen. But all of this is conditional according to what the Israeli would do, because the Lebanese side is already ready for ceasefire.
Regarding the conditions of the southern suburbs of Beirut, has the shelling of it quieted down in the past 2 days?
No. Yes. The first day was calm, but last night was very violent because there were more than 9 raids in the southern suburbs of Beirut. They were very violent raids. It was a very violent night.
Okay, so in light of Hezbollah intensifying its strikes against Israel, could Israel perhaps withdraw due to these strong strikes from Hezbollah?
Israel has a bank of goals, and the same applies to Hezbollah. Both parties are working on achieving their banks of goals that they have already set up. The current strikes that we see are sufficient to force Israel to stop their aggression, and evidence to this last night was very violent because of the aggression. So the missiles launched by the resistance until today are not enough to stop Israel. But the continuation, who feels pain first is the one who would call for a ceasefire. As long as Israel is internationally supported and as long as its budget, despite of the loss, is supported, and I think Israel is more distinguished in the military side, why would they stop the war before achieving their bank of goals? Unless they receive a painful strike that would force them or would make Israel at that time stop the fire. But the actions of the resistance in Lebanon or Hezbollah, the support from Iran against the Israelis is not enough to stop the war, I mean.
That was the political writer Suruj Apikyan. Thank you so much for your insights. Now we're going to move back to Hela for more news and developments around the world.
Thank you very much, Salma. And now we move to the latest developments in Gaza. At least 40 Palestinians have been killed and over 80 are injured following an Israeli airstrike on a residential building in Beit Lahia in northern Gaza. Palestinian local media reported that Israel attacked a block of at least 5 homes overnight near the western roundabout in Beit Lahia. They also reported that the total number of deaths since the beginning of the occupation siege in northern Gaza has risen to about 1,000, with health system rendered non-functional. A series of Israeli airstrikes on the Jabalia refugee camp have killed 20 Palestinians and left many others injured. The Gaza-based health authorities reported that Israeli forces struck a residential complex near Al-Fakhura school in the camp. Medics said that the new strike damaged several houses in Jabalia, the largest of the Gaza Strip's 8 historic refugee camps. This marks the 23rd consecutive day of Israel's ongoing siege in northern Gaza. Eight Palestinians have been killed and several others were injured in an Israeli airstrike on a school housing displaced people in a Shati refugee camp. The medical sources confirmed the deaths, and this marks the second time that the school has been targeted by Israeli occupation of this month, which also resulted in numerous casualties. And for more developments in the African continent, we move now to Mona in our newsroom. To you, Mona.
Well, thank you so much, Hala. And we now move to the latest developments in Africa. The Ugandan government has announced this morning that the death toll from last week's fuel tanker explosion near the Ugandan capital, Kampala, has risen to 24. In an earlier statement, the Ugandan Communications Minister reported 11 deaths. He has since reported an additional 13 deaths in Kurudu and Bambu military hospitals, bringing the toll to 24. The WHO's representative in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Burima Sambo, has praised the success of the ongoing mpox vaccination campaign in 6 of the nation's provinces. Sambo reported that several provinces in the country have achieved 100% coverage of the targeted plan for the first dose of the vaccination campaign. Ivory Coast's former Trade Minister Jean-Louis Billon has stated that he would seek the nomination of the Democratic Party of Ivory Coast for the country's 2025 presidential election. Billon will be challenging the current Democratic Party leader and the former CEO of the Credit Suisse Bank, Tidjane Thiam. These were all the African news we have for now. With Hala, and back to you, Hala.
Thank you so much, Monan. We now move to the latest developments in the economy. Data released by the National Bureau of Statistics revealed that China's industrial profits saw a significant drop in September, marking the steepest monthly decline of the year. The Bureau reported a 27.1% decrease in profits from a year earlier, following a 17.8% reduction in August. Additionally, earnings across the first 9 months of the year fell by 3.5%, a notable shift from the 0.5% increase recorded between January and August. Meanwhile, the Asian markets have reflected a mixed yet positive outlook, supported by Wall Street's recent gains and the expectation of policy updates from China. With the U.S. and European markets closed today, Tokyo's Nikkei 225 rose 0.4%. The Hong Kong's Hang Seng climbed 2.4%. The Shanghai Composite gained 2.0%, and South Korea's Kospi edged 0.3%. The oil prices have been experiencing an upward trend influenced by global supply uncertainties and the geopolitical tensions. The U.S. Texas Intermediate crude is currently priced at around $71.35 per barrel, marking a 2.16% increase. The Brent crude has risen to $76.05 per barrel, reflecting a 2.25% gain. And that brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here is what we have been covering. The Egyptian president and his Algerian counterpart stressed the necessity of a ceasefire in Gaza and Lebanon. Israeli warplanes launched a raid on Bafilia and Khiam in Lebanon with 2 missiles. And 40 Palestinians dead and over 80 injured after an Israeli airstrike on Beit Lahia in northern Gaza. And this concludes our news bulletin for this hour. Don't forget to follow us, Q News, on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. For real-time updates, connect with us on the UMS digital platform. Watch it. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more updates here on Q News.